Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we are talking about the Celtics Miami Heat series. We're going to eventually talk about the Cleveland Orlando series, and then we're going to talk about the predictions of the Boston Celtics versus either the Orlando Magic or Cleveland. I am just going ahead and recording because the Boston Celtics have already moved on. I will eventually record the other two parts to this collective video later on once I figure out who's moving on in the next series. Orlando and Cleveland play tonight, so that should be interesting to see who comes out if the game ends there or goes to Game 7. But let's just jump into it. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting. I'd appreciate all the support as I get this thing up and going. And yeah, Boston Celtics, Miami. So we'll start with the Celtics as we've done so. There's less to talk about here for the Celtics. Look, aside from Game 2, where it was just a bizarre shooting night from the Heat where they shot 53% from three and they made about 23 of those. It's hard to win those kind of games. But for the most part, the Celtics did something like after Game 2, you started to notice a little bit more shot variance, more mid-range shots, more taken to the rack. And of course, the threes are going to fly. That's their bread and butter. But my main criticism with the Celtics essentially all year long is that sometimes it comes down to please don't get tunnel vision and just keep shooting threes if they're contested. Sometimes it's as simple as how about you shoot threes when they're wide open? You can create that by driving and kicking, running more pick and rolls instead of just moving it around the perimeter as much as they do. And they did that a lot in this series. Derek White was probably the best player in this series. And the only other thing to really talk about here is they look like one of the three best teams in the playoffs so far. I think a lot of people figured that going in, but they definitely confirmed that after Game 2. It was a question because the series was tied, and then they just gentlemen swept them, the Heat. So, okay, it's a great way to start the playoffs. Now, Kristaps Porzingis' injury is concerning because he is almost the fundamental piece that really puts these guys over the top, in my opinion, because of the offense that he provides, of being 7'2" guy who can shoot threes from practically anywhere and post up, along with the defensive impact of being a rim protector, defensive anchor. And if he has the same injury as Giannis, you want him to rest as long as you possibly can. And I think they have a good chance to do this. If the reports are true about him coming back by the conference finals, that's solid. You'll probably, to me still, this feels more like a cakewalk for the Celtics here. And when that changes will be by the conference finals. But they still need to be super focused and locked in because you notice in Game 2, there's a little bit lack of focus there. We destroyed them in Game 1. What are they going to do? As long as they remain focused, have shot variance, and keep up the offense and defensive tenacity that they've had so far, you should be good. And you definitely put that on display against the Miami Heat. Now, let's talk about the Miami Heat. There's a little bit more here to talk about. In terms of the Heat, yes, you had no Jimmy Butler. Having said that, a lot of people, myself included, have just been begging for the Heat to try and make some changes. Now, someone who's a fan of a team in the Southeast region as well, I don't love the Heat, obviously. I'm not a Heat fan. But it feels kind of like asset mismanagement to have Jimmy Butler and what he can do in the playoffs and constantly have basically the same exact team around him. You're not going for the big guns. You don't need necessarily another star, but I feel like there just needs be more better role players around, just going for someone else. Yes, you could probably go for one more star because of just how many guys you have in the G League who develop into these great undrafted role players for your team. So this would be one of the only teams that I'd say if you want to do a big three thing, it could very well work. There needs to be one other consistent offensive player on this team, whether it's a playmaker, it's probably a playmaking, shot creating guard. And they don't really have that. Now, you also miss Terry Rozier. That probably could have helped a little bit more, but man, this was, other than Game 2, this was a really rough series for Tyler Hero. I still think Bam is probably underrated. I think I don't really know where I'd rank him overall, but like his defense is still great. And when he was the number one option in games, it was pretty good, but it was just, mid-rangers getting to the rack, not threes. And that's fine. You got to know like what you're best at. But from here on, it becomes, do the Heat actually make changes? Because they really haven't made any changes for the most part in the past like 4 years. They do. It's very, very minimal changes. You get one player, you move off of one guy. And I'm wondering when they make the all-in move, because they're still, they still have picks. Yes, they've given some up for Terry Rozier, and they've given some up in the past for Kyle Lowry a couple years back. When are they going to go for like the all-in move? I know they really wanted Damian Lillard, but they didn't want him enough to like. They stayed very adamant in, we will give you this trade package or no trade package, and that backfired because Joe Cronin definitely hates Pat Riley and the Miami Heat. Look, I just wouldn't necessarily put all my chips into 8th seed goes on a miraculous finals run every other year. I really think they just need some changes that helps their floor a little bit more, because we know what their ceiling is. Just something that fundamentally makes their floor go up a little bit, so that they're not a play-in team for the past. They've been a play-in team for the past 2 years. They need to try and get to be a top 6 seed, especially in a weird Eastern Conference right now that's trying to figure out what it is. The Celtics are the best team in the East, and then after that, it's much more of a question mark. It's a lot of horse racing between teams, a lot of young teams coming up, a lot of older teams falling off, kind of like the Heat a little bit, just being an 8th seed a couple of years in a row, injuries and all of that. The East is probably going to go through a phase in this upcoming year where a lot changes, because we figured out who these teams are. It's kind of like the West last year, except I don't think it'll be as good as the West this year going into next. But I think the East will get better. And the main question here is, will the Heat go in on certain players that might be available in the offseason, which I think they should. I think guys like Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, like, you got to get one of those guys, because the defense around those players is going to be great. Everyone on this team essentially will be a good defender because that's their calling card. The main question is, do we think Pat Riley is going to do it? And I just don't know. It's just this will be another interesting team to watch. But based on past experiences, they'll probably just say, we like this team, we're going to run it back. And if that's the case, then yes, you can't count them out with when Jimmy Butler plays, but there gets to be a point where just making the finals just isn't good enough, because you get to the finals and then you get beat in 5 or 6 games, and then that's it. And you got to wonder at one point, with how great Jimmy Butler is in the playoffs, with how great Bam has been defensively in the playoffs, and just how great of a coach Eric Spoelstra is in the playoffs, if you just went in on this singular player, I don't know who that is currently, you might finally be able to break out and finally win a championship in the Jimmy Butler era. But it's hard to tell what they're going to do. But yeah, that's all I got for this section. We're going to transition to Orlando-Cleveland series next. Okay, so moving on to the Cleveland Magic series. It was a 7-game series. You can't complain in that regards. You can complain about how we got to that 7 games. This one was the no team can win on the road series. And that's really what it came down to. There were really close games, 5, 6, at points in 7. But look, starting with Cleveland, you did it. You did not lose this series. Oh my God. There were moments there, especially at the beginning of Game 7. It just was really, really rough looking. And honestly, it's pretty apparent just because with Jarrett Allen out, how impactful and important he is on this team. I think whenever you just talk about what the Cavaliers should do going forward, whenever they get bounced in the playoffs, because I don't think they're a real contender at this point, Jarrett Allen, you cannot trade that man. He is quite literally too important to this team. You notice it immediately. That's when Orlando really started to get momentum at times in the series, where Paolo started really attacking the rim, was when he immediately was gone. And that's what empowered Paolo to take a step up, and we'll talk about the matchup in 1 second. For the Cavs going forward, Donovan really carried super hard at times in the series, so shout out to him. And Evan Mobley had incredible defensive moments and defense and his defensive intensity overall, including basically a game-clinching block in Game 5, and that was huge. I'm not expecting him to make the consistent offensive leap during this next round against the Celtics, but he's going to be very important for trying to slow down players like Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and you're not going to really have to worry as much about Al Horford because Kristaps Porzingis is out. He's going to be really important. Donovan Mitchell is going to have to give it his all, and we'll have a bigger conversation about this in one moment, but Darius Garland really, really, really needs to step up, man. He had a really rough go at it in this first round against the Magic. Now, for the Magic side, I'm going to make this really quick. I've had so many of these videos be super long, so this is a little bit of an easier topic overall in this episode today. For the Magic, you got to just give a lot of credit here to Paolo Banchero. You saw during this series, like, the rise, in my opinion. He was an all-star this year. He wasn't super efficient. He was turnover prone. Yes, that remains the same, but in the moments where the Magic looked incredible was when he realized, oh, I'm just 6'10 and 250 pounds. I can get to the rack whenever I want. When he had that initiative and aggression to his game, I mean, it looked like he would get fouled. He would take, like, he would and one. And then that in itself draws gravity to him. And then that opens up for everyone else. Now, on the flip side here, other than Jalen Suggs and his defense, because, man, he is a great guard defender and perimeter defender overall. The problems with this team are the same problems they've had all year long. And that is they're just not consistently shooting threes and consistently making threes. In Game 7, this was a real stinker from Franz, and it really sucks to see just that he didn't have it going. This was a down year for Franz, honestly, in terms of shooting. So if he works on that and comes back as a better shooter, that would be very tremendous for this team. This team simply needs a better point guard. The Markelle Fultz thing, it's just about over. I think a point guard that can play make, obviously can keep running playmaking through Franz and Paolo, and that's going to work out fine. But just having one more consistent playmaker in terms of a point guard and having Jalen Suggs as your shooting guard hopefully develops the shot a little bit more. A point guard that can create their own shot consistently, especially from three, and play make is the point of emphasis for this Magic team. I think they have shooters in the G League and kind of out of rotation, and I think slowly but surely they will find their way into the maybe not starting lineup, but off the bench, etc. The defense is going to be as great as it ever has been going forward. But the main thing here is if you're looking at the Magic, you're looking at, okay, they took Cleveland to a 7-game series. They are on the rise. I think they're going to get better. For the offseason for the Magic, like I said, point guard is the position of need. They have plenty of draft capital to make it happen. You know, I'm not necessarily saying like Darius Garland after what just happened, but I mean, you're looking at guards that might be on the trade block, and maybe invest in those, because I know you have Anthony Black and you can keep working to develop. I wouldn't mind, like, you're not going to need too many assets to get some of the guards that are going to be on the trade block this offseason. So if you don't go all in, but throw a little bit of the draft capital you've accumulated during this rebuild, and we might be cooking here for the Magic. But that's really what I have for them. They're in really good position here. And let's just transition straight into the Cavs-Celtics series. So I am concerned for the Cavaliers. Darius Garland had a disaster of a first round series. He was just truly awful. I don't know how else to explain it. He was a non-factor a lot of times. And Donovan Mitchell is going to have his hands full. Instead of just Jalen Suggs this time, now you have Drew Holiday and Derek White. Now, I've been a Celtics and Drew Holiday critic specifically in the past, but I do think that Drew Holiday's offense is not going to be as impactful this time around. I think the wings on this team are going to have their hands full with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And this really just comes down to, will Jarrett Allen, will he come back? Will he be a part of the series? Because I think he's really important to either extend the series or have them be an upset. I would not pick them to upset the Celtics, but Jarrett Allen would be really huge with Kristaps Porzingis out. He'd be very, very big, because even though Al Horford is still good at his age as a role player, as a defensive role player specifically, the main thing here is that Allen is more of a rim runner, and that's not necessarily Al Horford's specialty as a defender of the center position. He's really good against guys like Joel Embiid, guys that like to shoot, mid-rangers, shoot from the outside. That is a specialty for Al Horford. So having Jarrett Allen here would really help. But all that being said, even without Kristaps Porzingis, they still just really routed the Heat, aside from that one very insane shooting performance in Game 2 from the Miami Heat. I would have the Celtics in no more than 5 games here. The Cavaliers were prone in this past series to just kind of default when Donovan Mitchell didn't have it going. I mean, they lost that Game 6 in Orlando when Donovan had 50, and basically no one else gave you anything. You need someone offensively on the Cavaliers to step up outside of Donovan Mitchell, because if that is not going to happen, I don't know if you can consistently believe in Darius Garland after this first round series, or Evan Mobley. You know, his offense is still being fleshed out, but it's not necessarily as consistent currently. Isaac Okoro, I'm not entirely sure. Karis LeVert, one of these guys needs to figure it out consistently, and then we might be talking about a real series, but I just don't see that happening. And so I have the Celtics in no more than 5. This could be a sweep, but I'm going to go 5 here, just because Donovan's going to have one incredible game, and if he has an incredible, one of those masterclass games, and just a singular other player on that team steps up, they could probably win a game. But I know that might be looking down on the Cavaliers, but really here, the Celtics are the better version of the Magic. They're the better offensive Magic with just as good defense, even without Kristaps Porzingis. It's just not looking good. And the Cavaliers need to find a way to win on the road. That's it. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break because my sister's graduation is coming up. Birthday is coming up, all of that. So I will see you guys next week. But I have all these videos I've just recently dropped. See if I can get one more short out or something like that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, listening. Sub, like, comment, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.